Welcome to Clause 8. You're watching a short clip from one of our full episodes, featuring real conversations with the leaders shaping IP.
The other part of piece I guess I want to talk with you is, prosecution. I think you have something we both kind of join about is like we're both huge fans of examiner interviews.
Right.
And I remember when I started practicing, I might have told the story before, is that I had a partner who was training me, and I was looking through our document management system, and I saw other attorneys were doing interviews, and they were reaching agreement, and they were kind of relying on an agreement to move cases forward towards allowance. So I brought it up to that partner who was training me, and the partner goes, no. We're going to present our arguments. In response, we're going to send them to the patent office. They're going to send us another office action, and then we'll take it from there. And I think from his, because of when he started practicing, he didn't think examiner interviews were effective.
Right.
And it took that just like back and forth. I guess what made you think examiner interviews work? What brought you around that?
I actually interviewed pretty much every single case. For me, it was helpful, like in terms of getting my story out there, explaining to the examiner how things worked. And then, quite frankly, like you have all the data that's out there right now that indicates that examiner interviews, that they help, right? They help for allowance. But at the same time, I think what I understood prosecution to be is that you're really working with another person, right? It's not a robot on the other side, although sometimes it might seem that way. You really, this whole job that we have that I thought was about law is really about people. And that's why I think examiner interviews can be very helpful. They're not always helpful, but I think they can be very helpful if you can utilize all the tools properly.
When you think about an interview, like what's your goal? Like I know you have some.
I guess there's two primary goals, and to the extent that I even get one of them, I'm happy, right? And the first goal is always to understand how the examiner is approaching or is interpreting our invention or our claims. As well as the references, right? I think that's always useful because even if they end up disagreeing with me, and the second goal being, obviously, I want them to agree with me, but even if they end up disagreeing with me, at least I can take back knowing what they believe in, what they know about our claims and the references, and then I use that to basically tweak our response.
Yeah. It's crazy how many times, me and you are a huge fan of examiner analytics. So we know examiner analytics. We look at the office action. We look at the prior art, and you form some kind of like, let's say the first impression of what the examiner is thinking, and then you get on the phone, and the examiner tells you something completely different. Where it might be super helpful sometimes. They're like, oh, if you just do this, and you would have no way of knowing unless you got on the phone. And there's, for whatever reason, that happens because there's some dynamics at the patent office where the supervisor might tell them, like, the only way you can allow this case of X happens, but they don't want to put it in the office section or whatever it is. And you won't find out until you get a call. So just to get, even if your whole interview is just getting on the phone and like you're going saying, all right, what's on your mind about this application? Even that it would be worthwhile, but part of a goal is the first goal, right? Try to convince them our way. And I guess, how do you think about that? How do you convince an examiner? Because obviously by the point we get on the call with an examiner to do the interview, the examiner has already spent time, especially now that there's no first action file program, he has spent time, examining this application, drafting the office action, putting his arguments, together. He's already made his first impression. How do you get them to an agreement once they've already kind of invested themselves into that?
There's a book with a lot of concepts on this. I think I've probably mentioned to you many times, right? It's called Never Split the Difference. It's a book about, it's not, a lot of the stories about are about FBI hostage negotiation scenarios, but a lot of it works here even in examiner interviews, because I think what the examiner often wants is to also feel like they were understood, right? They want to get their piece across. They want to feel like you listened, that you understood. And then once that happens is where the magic starts to happen, right? Where you acknowledge, certain things, you let them know that you realize that certain aspects of your claims may not be inventive, but then you can go on at that point to explain what the inventive feature is, right? Why it is novel over the art, why it provides that technical improvement, right? But I think you have to get to a point where they're not defensive, where by getting them to feel like they're understood, that you've listened to them, that you understood, that's when they start to open up, right? And I don't know, that's been so helpful for me.